Hi guys. So you guys asked for a tutorial on making beeswax wraps. So this is my first ever attempt at making a tutorial. Probably long-winded, as it already is. Anyway, so this is what you need. I went to my local fabric store and I picked some fabric I really liked, which is this cool one with cactuses on it and a really nice pink one to kind of match the bits of pink in there. Um, I also got some other kind here. What you're looking for in terms of fabric is the simplest, most basic cotton. The thinner, the better. This one is actually a little bit nicer quality, so it actually might not work quite as well, but it was so pretty I couldn't resist. Um, and then this one was just sort of the bargain basement fabric, and it's super thin and a little rough, and I can kind of see through it, and that's actually the best stuff you can use. So I bought, um, I guess, a yard or two square of each kind. And then I got my special scissors with the little nubbies on it. I don't know none of the professional names. Anyway, so that I used to cut out my shapes. I used to do circles, but I found them really tedious. So I've stuck mostly with squares and rectangles. I tend to use this size. For example, I use this for, I took my lasagna making pan and I just treaced it and then cut out a slightly bigger, like about an inch around all the sides, because you want it, of course, to fold over. And then I find these smaller ones to be a really popular size. I use them for covering up cheese or half an onion or um, maybe wrapping a sandwich. And then sometimes I'll take a bowl that I use a lot, like our big popcorn bowl, and I might trace around that and also cut that size out. So think about things you normally wrap in saran wrap and then bust those out and measure and cut using your trusty alligator scissors. They kind of look like that. We'll call them alligator scissors. Anyway, so once the cutting out is quite tedious, but you just need to get all that done in advance, I would say. And then here are some of the things that you'll need. So this is the beeswax. No, it's cosmetic grade beeswax. Of course, you're going to put it on food, so you want it to be food grade or cosmetic grade. Both will work. And then also organic. So this one is USDA organic certified, which I like to use. Also, you can buy this on Amazon, but you can also source this directly from the people who make it. Now that I found them, that's what I do. And then you need resin. So this is pine resin, and use that to make the beeswax wraps a little bit sticky, and that helps them to stick to itself. So when you fold it over something, it actually adheres a little bit instead of having to use something to hold it on. And I bought this bag at the beginning of starting the very first time I ever did the beeswax wraps, and it's still half full, so you don't need very much of this, and it lasts a really long time, and it's kind of messy, so just be warned about that. And then the last thing you need is jojoba oil, and this just makes the wax wraps smell nice, and um, that's really all that it does, but it's just sort of an added bonus. And yeah, it's not an offensive smell by any means. It's just a really nice smell, and it tends to slowly degrade over time. So it's not super perfumey or anything. And I'm quite sensitive to smells. So this one I didn't have any issues with that. So hopefully that works for you. Now today I also have some I already did the last time, but it doesn't have enough wax on them. So I'm actually going to re-wax these. So I'll talk to you about both things. Anyway, so I'll see you in a few minutes. Now that I've have all my pieces cut out, I'll see you at the stove. All right, so here we are at the stove. On the stove, I have a pot that I got from Value Village. I only use it for this purpose because it will be totally destroyed. You can't use it for anything else. So don't use a nice pot that you use for cooking. And then I am using a mason jar that's got a nice wide mouth. If you have something even wider mouth, if you want to use a bowl or something, that works too. You just want to be able to double boil it. And again, you can't reuse this for anything else. So you're committed to this being your beeswax wrap vesicle. And then on top, so I'm going to start it boiling, get the water going. There we go. I'll turn this down so you won't be able to see my face, but I don't think that's the point. So there we go. And then here to the side, I have my little wax pellets. So I'm putting in a cup of wax pellets into the jar. And then, oh, that's quite hot. There we go. And it's going to just slowly start to melt as the water heats up. And then I'm going to add for every cup of beeswax, I'm going to add in 1/3 of a cup of the pine resin. So here's 1/3 of a cup right here. And they're sort of big and little chunks mixed in. I recommend trying to get the smallest chunks possible because actually this is quite a pain to melt. It takes a long, long time for this to properly melt. So you're going to have to be patient with it. In fact, I usually do this first and then do my cutting. And then by the time I'm done my cutting, this is good to go. So there we go. That they're both in there. I usually find that a cup of the beeswax is not a huge amount. You can probably do maybe 10 wraps at the most with that amount. I would highly recommend that you, if you're going to do a batch, especially if it's like gifts for people, that you probably do at least 2 cups. I think going to do 1.5 cups today. So I'm going to do some extra measuring and add some more into my bowl. And I will see you when this is all melted. Oh, one more thing before I go is I use one of these, like a chopstick that is just one of the ones you'd normally throw away. I usually keep them. And then I use that for stirring because, again, anything that you put in here is going to be no use to you ever again for anything else except beeswax wrap making. So don't use anything good. And yeah, I just use this to kind of stir it, give it a stir, and you'll see that as the pine resin melts, it kind of blends together into this chunky ball, and you really, really got to get the heat up as much as you can to make it totally turn to liquid. So it can take as much as an hour sometimes to get it to where it needs to be. So you're going to have to be patient with it. And like I said, start it at the beginning. Okay, so I'll see you when this is ready to go. Hi again. I realized I didn't even tell you about the jojoba oil. So the jojoba oil for the 1 cup of beeswax, we're going to use 1 tablespoon of jojoba oil. So we'll put that in. And there you go. So now everything is really, truly in there. Again, the jojoba oil is, I guess, an extra thing. It's not necessary as far as I understand it, but it does make them feel and smell really nice. So I just always done it that way. Okay, so since I already did my cutting, I actually don't really have a whole lot to do while I wait for the wax stuff to be ready. So I'll just show you the rest of my prep. So I have some wax paper. You can also use parchment paper. I tend to covet my parchment paper, so I use that for baking. So the wax paper is fine for this job. I have this old cookie tray that I use. And I'm just gonna make it a little bigger because I want to basically protect the cookie tray from getting the resin on it as best I can. And then I also am going to take another piece of wax paper for myself, and I'm going to lay it on the floor over here, which seems silly, I suppose, but actually if you look up, I have this thing I made right here, which is just a coat hook with a couple of these guys on it. And I use that to dry the beeswax wax, and sometimes they drip. And the first couple times I did this project, it dripped all over the floor, and then it was a real pain to have to go with a knife and scrape it all off. So now I put a wax paper down underneath it, and then no problem. And then I'm going to turn on my oven to about 250, 300. I kind of play around with it. Everyone's oven is a little bit different. And then that, and I'll explain that later, but I want to get my oven going. Okay, so I'm just checking it on my beeswax. So the wax looks like it's basically totally melted. It's very liquidy. But if I put my stir stick into it, I see there's still big chunks of the pine resin. So that's what really takes a long time to melt. And you kind of got to break it apart and stir it now and then and move it around. Yeah, it's a huge, huge chunk right now, as you can see. So I'm just going to turn up the heat as high as I can kind of get it. And I'm just going to keep working away at it until it is fully melted. You do obviously need to watch the water because I've already burned off quite a bit of, or boiled off quite a bit of water. So you want to make sure that you don't run dry. And yeah, just keep working at it till it's ready to go. Okay, so I'm just checking in again. It's definitely got more liquidy. If I pull it out, it's no longer a big chunk I can hold, but it's still goopy. So we still have to keep going until this is totally liquefied. The first batch I made, I was a little impatient and I didn't wait for it to be totally melted. And what happened was I got little crusty resin bits all over a bunch of my beeswax wraps, which didn't look very nice. It always looked like they were kind of dirty. And also, it obviously is not as effective. So yeah, you just got to keep working at it, be patient, string it apart, turn up the heat as high as you can get it. I actually wish that I had a bigger pot because that would definitely help. This is the one I got and I've been using, but maybe next time I go to a secondhand shop, I'll look for a bigger one that I can use. But yeah, so just keep stirring away, keep checking on it now and then. That's it. Okay, so we're basically ready here. When I'll take it out so you can see. Ooh, it's pretty warm. There it is. There's a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of resin in the bottom of that. If I can get it, there it is. This little nubby, can be a real pain to get to melt. So in the past, I've just basically caught it and taken it out because it being minus that small amount, it's not going to change the consistency too much. So it just seems really stubborn. So I find it easier to just sort of take it out. But if you want to stick with it, feel free. Anyway, I think we're ready to start doing the beeswax wraps. So I'll be back with you in a moment with all the fabric. Okay, so I'm ready to start. I've got my fabric here. I've got my wax totally and resin mixture melted, and I've got my tray with the wax on it. I've got my oven going. I've got my little thing set up over there for drying. I'm good to go. There are many different ways you can do this. I do not by any means think my way is the best way. In fact, my way is probably super convoluted and makes very little sense. But I've tried a bunch of different ways and I find just a little bit of a combination of things works the best. So in the spirit of having said that, oh, see, I'm missing something already. Pause. So I've got my little bamboo stick. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this first piece of fabric and I'm going to ball it up and I'm going to put it right in there. So it's going to get really covered in resin, like so totally through. I'm going to use this little pokey to get it really right down there. Okay. Then I'm going to coax it back up again. It will be hot. I find that my fingers can deal with it, but kind of like putting out a candle with your fingers. Once the wax coats them, then they're a little bit easier to deal with. Now this first one is going to have way too much wax on it. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this one and I'm going to put it over here so it can drip a little. Now, let me see if I can show this to you. This is why you got to be really patient. I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, but on this piece of fabric, I can see a chunk of yellowy resin right in there. And that means that this one will, there was just happened to be something I missed, and that happened. So your first one may not work out as well as the rest of them. And there's not really a whole lot you can do about that because once it's on there, it's kind of stuck. But that's okay, because the one thing that's nice about the wax itself is that you can continuously heat it and cool it, and heat it and cool it as needed. So what I'm actually going to do with my second piece is I'm going to take the piece that it has nothing on it, and I'm going to put it on top of this piece like that. And then I'm going to do another one in here. Get it nice and covered. And get it out of there. I find that some colors bleed too, and it definitely darkens whatever color fabric you choose. So you want to go with a really vibrant fabrics, knowing that the vibrancy is going to be less when you are finished, or you can just go with white. So I can see, yeah, there's a little bit of resin on this one too. So I was a little impatient. It's not, I mean, you can still use the wraps. There's nothing wrong with it. I just won't gift these ones because they don't look as nice as the others. Ouch. Okay. So I'm going to just lay this across the one that is, there we go. So I've basically sandwiched two completely waxy filled sheets with not one that has nothing in it. And I'm actually going to put another one on too, like this. Then I'm going to toss this in the oven. And basically the two that have no wax are going to absorb a lot of the wax from the first. So there we go. It's in the oven. And like I said, my oven is at 300 right now. And I'm going to leave it in there just for a couple minutes. It is nice to have a second tray you can use so you can be swapping them out all the time. I unfortunately only have the one, so I'm going to put you on pause till it's ready for the next. Okay, so I'm going to check on the stuff in the oven. Just going to pull it out. I'll show you. So I can see that the first one has pulled out some of the wax. So it's kind of got, it's hard for you to see it on there, unfortunately, but it's got kind of waxy bits and non-waxy bits. So that's fine. I'm just going to put that to the side for now. This is one of the really waxy ones. And what happens to this one that was too waxy is that some of the wax was removed. So now I can actually hang this one up. So I'm going to take it over here. And I'm just going to clip it to my trusty little hanger gadget. I'll show you in just a second. So there it is. They're just hanging. It only, honestly, within like a minute and a half, it will be cool enough that I can do something with it. Now, this is the one that had no wax on it at all. It's getting stuck because of that bit of resin. What a pain. Another reason why you really want to make sure the resin is super, super mixed in. So I can see on the back of this that there's a couple of little spots that are dry still. So if you look closely on your own, you'll be able to tell that there's dry spots, just like if any liquid spilled on this, you could tell what was wet and what was dry. So same idea. And this guy at the bottom, the very first piece I did, still has too much wax in it. So I'm going to move it. So this is a weird little thing I do. I'm taking the one that had almost no wax on it. I'm putting it at the bottom because now on my tray, there's some melted wax. So hopefully it will soak that up. Then I'm going to put my middle piece that had no wax on it and now has a substantial amount, but not enough, in there. And then I'm going to take my super waxy one that was at the bottom and I'm going to put it on top. Is this a perfect science? Absolutely not. So you're going to probably do this and then find your own way. And please feel free to message me the ideas you come up with to kind of, basically you just want them all to have a similar consistency. That's all. So here's the one that I did that seemed okay. And I'm feeling it now and it feels good. It should be relatively firm. I can hold it straight out and it doesn't flop over, but it's not hard as a rock or anything. It still bends. There is a little bit of resin right here. See that? So that's not as nice. That doesn't, again, that doesn't hurt anything. It just, I might not give that one as a gift. And that's the bottom side. This is the top. So you can see, oh, I don't have any more to show you. I'll compare next time, but basically the color, I just wanted to highlight the fact that the color is a little bit darker now. I also find sometimes reds in particular run, and then it will run into all of your wax. And then if you're trying to do another color, it'll dye those. So that's a problem I faced last Christmas. So just watch out for that. So now that this one's done, I'm just going to put it on the table and call it a day for that one. Then I'm going to go check on the other pieces that are in the oven. Okay, so I'm going to check in the oven again on my pieces. So the top piece here was the very, very first one I put in the jar, and it is looking much better now, not too full of wax. So I'm going to hang this one up. If I'm wrong and there is too much wax or there's not enough wax, I can always do it again. So it's not the end of the world. And as you have more practice, you'll have a better eye for what is ready and what's not. So now I'm going to check on my middle piece here. Let's see. So besides it being stuck because of the little bit of resin, it actually looks perfect too. I'm just going to check. Yeah, there's one or two little spots that still look not wet. And actually, I'm just gonna, because it's just a tiny, tiny little bit, I'm gonna put it on the bottom and just soak up a tiny bit of wax here at the bottom of my tray. And that should be enough to do what I need it to do. Yeah, that looks good. So this one needs to be hung up, but my other one's there. So I'm gonna go and move that one and then hang this one up. And I'll get back to you in just a minute. Okay, so I'm back. I'm gonna do this really big piece here. And I still have this one left, which is the one I put on top that had nothing. I didn't put it in this container. I just kind of laid it on top. So this one still needs more wax to it. So I'm gonna put that to the side for a minute. Then I'm gonna dump this one in here. I keep losing my little stick here. So this one is a lasagna platter one. Another thing you could do to mitigate the issue of the resin is you could just pour the mixture on here, because it's easy. It would be easier to catch any bits of resin that haven't fully melted. Sometimes they kind of get stuck to the side of the jar. So that is, like I said, there's a lot of different ways to skin this cat. So that is definitely one of them. Now, the bigger the piece is, the harder it is to get out of the jar. And of course, you got to be careful because it's going to drip. Go slow and over. Whoa. So this one is soaked. It's dripping, it's soaked. It's going to get all over the bottom. This is way too much wax. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it down in here in half because it's too big for the tray. And I am going to take that piece of resin, or sorry, that piece of fabric that didn't have enough in it, and I'm going to fold it in half as well. And then I'm going to lift this up and stick it in the middle. That way it can just have a chance to really, really soak up a bunch. There we go. And then I'm going to put, now this one I had made before that didn't have quite enough wax in it. I'm going to lay that on the top. So I'm going to actually take a one that's totally wax free, and I'm going to put it on here. And then I'm going to take, whoops, the one that has some wax, and I'm going to lay it on top. Like so. Back in the oven again. I can see I need to refill my water so it doesn't burn dry. And we'll check on that one in a few minutes. Okay, we're going to check these out again. So they've been in the oven for 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So that's the top piece. It definitely has absorbed some resin, which is good because I want it to be, or sorry, not resin, wax. This is the piece that had nothing on it. Ow! The dangers of beeswax wrap making. I don't know if you can see, but there's sort of some light there. You can see it better on that one. The light bits are the parts that haven't actually absorbed any wax. Now the rest of this actually feels really good. So what I'm gonna show you a little trick I've developed for dealing with this situation. If everything is totally good except it's just missing a few spots, is I'll take just a couple of little bits of the wax pellets and put it directly on those spots that have no wax on them yet. And then I'll put it back in the oven, and that will totally finish that one, and it'll be great. So I'm just gonna throw this back on top, throw this back in the oven, and we'll check on it again in a minute. Okay, so I'm gonna check that out. Yeah, they haven't totally melted yet. So they need a little more time. You can see, show you, see, they're still there. That's fine. We're just being impatient again. Okay, so I took it out and I lifted up the top layer. This one was, ow, so hot. This one's ready. It's good. So I'm gonna hang it up. It's not even dripping. Let it cool down. And here's my next one. That is looking good. That's perfect. I'll just let that one cool. Now I've got this really big one, the casserole cover that I did, and it probably, to be honest, has still too much wax in it, but I did put this other one inside, so let's check it out, see where it's at. Ooh. Definitely have to be able to put up with burny fingers. Yeah, that looks great. That one's definitely ready, but I don't have anywhere to put it. So in just a minute, those other two will be dry enough that I can move them over. So I think that basically sums up how to do it. When you're done, you'll have a bunch like this. I usually just fold them together with some instructions for use. And basically the instructions for use are pretty simple. You don't use them on meat or raw meat. You wash them with a light soap and water, cool water, because hot water will remove the wax. They obviously can't go to the dishwasher, and they're good for 1 year. So after a year, that's why I make a batch every December, and then I replenish my supply and give them out to other people. So that's it. If you have any questions about it, feel free to ask. And again, if you've discovered through trial and error another way of getting the wax onto these pieces of fabric more efficiently, I'm totally open to these ideas. And I hope you have a great day. It was lovely doing this tutorial with you. Bye.
and Merry Christmas.